Golden Goose by the MacMillan Company. Pictures by Lott, Seaman. There was once a man who had 3 sons. The youngest of them was called Simpleton. People always laughed at him and mocked him, whatever he did. One day, the eldest son wished to go into the forest to cut wood. Before he started, his mother gave him a delicious cake and a flask of wine, so that he would not be hungry or thirsty. When he came into the forest, he met a little old grey man who wished him good day and said, "Please, give me a bit of cake out of your pocket and let me have a drink of your wine. I'm so hungry and thirsty." But the eldest son answered, "Give you cake and my wine? I haven't any. Be off with you." He left the little man standing there and went off. He began to chop down a tree. Suddenly, he made a wrong stroke with his hatchet and cut his own leg so badly that he had to be carried home. That was what came of the little grey man. Then the second son started off. His mother gave him too a cake and a flask of wine. The little old grey man met him too and begged him for a bit of cake and a drink of wine. But the second son said, "Whatever I give you, I lose myself, so be off with you." And he went away. His punishment came soon. As he was chopping away at a tree with his hatchet, he cut his arm so badly he had to go home and have it bandaged up. So then Simpleton said, "Father, let me go for once into the forest and cut wood." His father answered, "Both your brothers have hurt themselves in the forest. Give it up. You don't understand about it." But Simpleton went on begging so long that at last his father said, "Well, be off with you. You will only learn by trying it." His mother gave him cake made with water and baked in the ashes and a flask of sour beer. When he came into the forest, the little old grey man met him and greeted him. "Give me a bit of your cake and a drink from your flask. I'm so hungry and thirsty." And Simpleton replied, "I've got only a flour and water cake and some sour beer, but if that is good enough for you, let us sit down together and eat." Then they sat down, and when Simpleton brought out his cake, it became a wonderful rich raisin cake, and the sour beer turned into good wine. Then they ate and drank, and afterwards the little man said, "As you have such a kind heart and share what you have so willingly, I will give you good luck. Yonder stands an old tree. Cut it down, and as it roots, you'll find something." Then the little old man went away. Simpleton hewed away at the tree, and when it fell, he saw sitting among its roots a goose with feathers all of pure gold. He lifted it out and took it with him to an inn where he meant to spend the night. The landlord had 3 daughters. When they saw the goose, they were curious to know what wonderful kind of bird it was and longed to have some of its beautiful feathers. The eldest thought, "I will wait for a good opportunity. Then I will pluck out one of its feathers for myself." So when Simpleton had gone out, she seized hold of the goose by its wing. But her fingers and hands stuck fast to the goose, and there they had to stay. Soon after came the second sister with the same idea, to pluck a golden feather for herself. But hardly had she touched her sister than she stuck fast to her and could not pull away. Then came the third sister with the same intention. But the other 2 cried, "Stay away! For heaven's sake, stay away!" But the youngest sister could not see why she was to stay away and thought, "If they are both taking feathers, why shouldn't I?" So she hurried to them. As soon as she touched one of them, she stuck fast to her. So they had to stay all 3 all night. The next morning, Simpleton took the goose under his arm and went away without paying any attention to the three girls who hung to it. The three always had to run after him, left or right, wherever his legs carried. In the midst of the fields, they met the parson. When he saw this strange procession, he called out, "Shame on you, girls, to run after a young fellow through the fields like this." And he seized the youngest girl by the hand to drag her away. But hardly had he touched her than he stuck on himself and had to run along after them. Not long after, the sexton came that way and was astonished to see his respected parson following at the heels of three girls. "Oh, your reverence, whither away so fast?" he cried. "Don't forget we have another christening today." And he ran after him and seized him by his gown, and there he stuck himself. As the five of them tramped on, one after the other, two peasants came up from the fields. The parsons cried out to them and begged them to come and set him and sexton free. But no sooner had they touched the sexton than they had to follow on, too. So there were 7 of them following Simpleton and the goose. By and by, they all came to a town where a king reigned who had an only daughter, so serious that no one could ever make her laugh. Therefore, the king had announced that whoever could make her laugh should marry her. When Simpleton heard this, he went with his goose and all the hangers-on to the king's daughter. As soon as she saw the 7 people running, always one after the other, she burst out laughing and could not stop. So Simpleton had earned her as his bride. But the king, who did not like him for a son-in-law, made all kinds of objections and said he must find a man who could drink up a whole cellar of wine. Simpleton thought that the little gray man ought to be able to help him, so he went into the forest, and on the very spot where he had chopped down the tree, he saw a man sitting with a very sad expression on his face. Simpleton asked him what the matter was, and the man answered, "I am very thirsty. I can't get enough to drink. Cold water does not agree with me. I have drunk up a whole cask of wine, but what is a drop like that?" "I can help you," said Simpleton. "Come with me, and you shall have enough to drink." So he took him to the king's cellar, and the man sat down before the big cask and drank till he drank up the whole contents of the cellar before the day was done. Then Simpleton asked once more for his bride, but the king did not like the idea of a stupid fellow whom people called Simpleton carrying off his daughter. So he began to make fresh conditions. He told Simpleton to find a man who could eat a mountain of bread. Simpleton did not hesitate, but went right off to the forest. There in the same place sat a man who was fastening a strap as tight as he could around his body and making a very sad face. He said, "I've eaten a whole bakehouse full of rolls. But what's the use of that when one is as hungry as I am? My stomach feels quite empty, and I have to strap myself together if I'm not to die of hunger." Simpleton was delighted and said, "Get up and come with me, and you shall have enough to eat." And he led him straight to the king's courtyard. Now the king had ordered all the meal in his kingdom to be brought together, and he had it baked into a huge mountain of bread. But the man from the woods just sat in front of it and began to eat, and in one day it all disappeared. Then Simpleton asked for his bride for the 3rd time. The king tried to make one more excuse and asked for a ship, "which would sail on land and water. When you come sailing along in it," said he, "you shall have my daughter for your wife." Simpleton started for the forest, and there he found the little old grey man, with whom he shared his cake, and who said, "I have eaten and I have drank for you, and now I will give you the ship. All because you were kind to me at first." Then he gave Simpleton a ship that could sail on land and on water, and when the king saw it, he knew he could no longer withhold his daughter. So the wedding took place with great rejoicing, and Simpleton became the king and lived long and happily with his wife. The end. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe and come back again.